And after a week of riveting Premier League fixtures, we're back online with the three boys again. Yet again, we have a full house. Hopefully, this becomes a common thing for the rest of the season. But we have Anitej from Hyderabad, Utsav quarantining from Boston, and Apurv in Jaipur. So
All it
we'll
took was
dive straight into the action.
coronavirus for us
Yeah,
to
but we'll just
actually all be on the pod.
quick update. On Utsav's coronavirus situation. He's been in contact with a positive patient, so he's stuck at home for another couple of weeks. So we're all he has. So please give him his due. So anyway, speaking of managers and players who need their due, the biggest the biggest hot topic coming into the season was Bielsa's Leeds rather, and an incredible opening day fixture for them against the reigning champions, the championship winners taking on the Premier League winners at Anfield. Really exciting game. We have two Liverpool fans here. Maybe you guys can take it on and talk about the game, talk about what you saw from Leeds, what you expect from them this season, how impressed you were with them, and maybe just end it with a little bit about Liverpool as well.
Oh, yeah, I mean, so basically it was really impressive to see Leeds play. But I don't know. I feel like Liverpool looked really bad at the back also. And Leeds were very good to capitalize. And Bielsa wasn't afraid to attack. Every time there was a ball crossing the box, there were five people storming the box, storming the defenders. And like it showed that, their midfield would get Trent or Gomez up, like they would pull them forward and then they would always counter that side. So it felt like they were playing some good counter attacking football, but I don't know. Yeah, I think it was a mixture of Liverpool's defense not being, as good as it was last season. Like they still need time to get up to speed. And also that they were playing Liverpool who were also attacking. I wonder how they will face, like, how they'll perform against Burnley or teams like that who'll just sit back and let them attack them till.
So just on that, a couple of things. I mean, yeah, definitely the game script in that sense obviously suited them in terms of Liverpool attacking, but the two ideas that they had really good ideas was pretty much essentially bypassing the midfield. So they would just not even try to win the ball in the midfield. They're just literally playing the long ball because while obviously, we have Van Dijk and we have pretty quick center backs and a quick defense in general, most of the time that I would say in the last 2 seasons or so that we struggle defensively is when we're not kind of set in our blocks and when it's kind of in transition, right? So that's kind of why I think that their idea was just to hit the long ball, try to gain possession. And then, like you say, the one thing that they did do, and I guess it is a kind of staple of Bielsa's game, is to storm the box with multiple guys. And I think that worked really well. And then obviously, like you said, Trent, for example, had an absolutely awful game. He was getting picked apart left, right, and center. But I mean, I just think that their plan definitely worked out in terms of getting at Liverpool's weakness. And I mean, kudos to them for making it a good
Jack
game.
Harrison, like
The quality of their goals was also incredible, dude. Like the first goal when he cut in on the right was really good.
Yeah.
And then the touch for the third goal and the finish was also really good.
The pass, like by Eldrick
the pass was
insane.
as good too. Yeah.
Even Harrison's goal that didn't count. Talking about it, like Utsav making that point about them playing it over, they got in a couple of times, right? He scored another goal, didn't count. So that was incredible, and I think you guys hit the nail on the head with those 2 points. I think them like playing over the top and that crowding of the box at the same time, like it's such a brave tactic, but it gave them dividends in that they were I think at 3-3 especially you would expect a team, first game in the Premier League to sort of shut shop, hold it down, but that's not how Leeds do it. And Bielsa's face, if it's going to be like that for the whole season, it's going to be a long season. He was very concerned the whole game.
He looked like Nick Nurse. He looked like Nick Nurse throughout the Celtics draft this series.
Smiled. Nick Nurse is a positive man. I don't think Bielsa ever smiles. Like this guy is incredible. I mean, but we were talking about how we saw similar things from Norwich last season, but I was actually watching this like Leeds fan podcast, and they were just talking about how obviously like they weren't trying to overhype their team or anything, but they said that this team has been together for so much longer than the Leeds team. I mean, than the Norwich team had been. Norwich added so many players coming into the Premier League, and so this team has like a really, really good spirit to each other. They really understand how each other plays, and he's really got the best out of all of them because this was the exact same team that Leeds had even before he joined. Most of these players were at Leeds even before
And
those
they
2 years ago.
lost for that game. They didn't have their two best center backs because obviously Ben White's at Brighton, and then their actual best.
Ben White is not coming back. But they have Robin Falk injured, so it's going to be and like I think one of you just said that like teams again. So even those fans on the podcast were saying that they expect to struggle against teams that play the low block like Burnley and stuff, but they expect to see a lot of results like this and a lot of games like this against the top 4 teams that will actually come and attack them because that will really play into their hands. But I mean, speaking more about Liverpool, do you think it's too early to comment on their defense? Van Dijk now has the most mistakes by a defender since the beginning of last season, which is just such a baffling stat. But I guess he had 2 in the Arsenal game and then 1 now. So,
I mean,
we aren't defending the title. First of all, we are attacking the title.
I mean, so I was telling Apoorv before the game, because we have our daily calls before each game, obviously, that Anitej wishes he could be a part of.
No.
But I was saying, I'm still worried about our defense, and he was kind of, a little bit more hopeful. I mean, after that, it's definitely concerning. But the one stat I did see, I can't remember it off of the top of my head, but some Liverpool fan was complaining on Twitter about the defense. And someone's just like, in those games that you've been complaining, it was like 4 or 5 games, we've scored 5, 4, 3, 4, and 5. So at the same time, they have still been winning those games. Hopefully it's just rusty feet. But the one positive is that, I mean, Salah looks, and Gary Neville was talking about it on MNF and just saying how he has that kind of killer instinct when he was comparing Rooney and Ronaldo. But Salah looked like, a man on a mission. And that second goal, that finish was just like something else.
That was lucky, like the penalties.
And even the penalties, did you see? So the reporter asked him a question where, were you nervous about taking the penalty when it was 3-3 first game back, new season? And he's like, I took a penalty in the Champions League final. Like, what are you talking about?
I mean, he took a penalty to take his team to the World
Cup.
Yeah. Like, that's a pretty big. Like that was also like in the 90th minute or something, like 91st for Egypt. But I mean, he has to barrow around those things in a wheelbarrow. I don't want to say the word because this is a family-friendly podcast, but anyway, we have. So that was probably the biggest, like, most exciting game of the week. But I think the most anticipated game was definitely the Chelsea-Brighton game. Everybody wanted to get a look at these new Chelsea stars, and unfortunately, Ziyech was injured. But there was and Ziyech and Chilwell were injured. Thiago Silva hasn't been able to train yet, but Havertz and Werner started, and we already have a big Werner fan in Anitej Rao. And Anitej, if you can talk about that performance. And Utsav made a good point earlier before when we were discussing about how Havertz's positioning was very, very odd. And I don't think we expect to see him in that position for the rest of the season. But if you can just talk about the two Germans and what you saw from them and what you expect.
I mean, just starting with Havertz, I think he will start out wide this season more often because I feel like players of that kind coming from Bundesliga, they will usually start out on the wing because you get more space and time there. Because when Ozil came to the Premier League in the beginning as well, he was often played out wide. So I definitely see Havertz being played out there as well, especially when you have Ziyech. And Lampard talked about how many number 10s he has. Loftus-Cheek, Ziyech, Mason Mount can play there. And then even Ross Barkley, the forgotten Englishman. So he's like... so he was talking about how many options he has and like how big of an headache he has. But yeah, I was definitely impressed with Werner more than Havertz. He was the one who won the penalty for them. And I think like moving forward, he's definitely going to be one of those like fox in the box kind of strikers for Chelsea. since they cross quite a lot as well. And speaking of crossing and like fullbacks, Reece James with a thunderbolt. He's
What was
actually
that?
he's
Right.
he's known for those shots. He like tries them quite often and doesn't work out too well, but
I've
this
heard
time it did come
Trent
off.
has a poster of Reese on his wall. He learns from
Yeah.
Reese.
Do you
He's
think Werner
the
will score more than 20 this season?
In the league or
Um,
all competitions?
League, just league.
I would say
I don't know
he'd
about
get
more
around
than
there.
20.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he'd
I'd
get
say
around
around.
there.
I think from what we saw on Monday, I mean on Monday, I don't think there's any reason to like bet against that because he eats up space and his
Yeah, he
finishing is supposed
runs
to be
for
exquisite.
days.
Exactly. So his positioning combined with his finishing, combined with his energy, and he was apparently like so when he was getting the penalty, he got a dead leg, which is why he's a doubt for the next game. But he still was running his ass off for the next 30 minutes, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he looks
I
like a really,
I
really
never
exciting
knew
prospect.
he's one of those players like Pato. Like you never really know how quick they are until they start running at you. You know, I never knew he was that quick, but he's
What I
insane.
will say just quickly on the Havertz thing is that not to say that I think he will be played through the middle, but I would like to see that for the hope of Chelsea fans, just because he has two very good feet. He's a tall guy, and I just think having him in the box, if you see at Leverkusen, the one thing about him was his composure and finishing. So I think that would really improve Werner and also just get them a lot more goals because obviously this is going off one game, but not only was he wide, but he was so deep as well. So all of the I don't so he didn't register a touch in the box in that entire game. So which would be concerning because of the type of player he is, and seeing him like play off of Werner as almost as a second striker would be something that I think would be very, very interesting. So we'll see this weekend against Liverpool how many of these new signings. I wonder if Pulisic will be back and what they actually decide to do from a setup standpoint.
Yeah, I think coming back to that we just talk about Chelsea's performance for a second. I think till Alzate made a bad mistake for the goal with the back pass, but
Yeah, that was so
till
bad.
that point, I think Chelsea had Brighton had 65% possession or 68%
Brighton looked
possession or
really,
something like
really
that.
good.
They were moving the ball well. Adam seems to be like
Yeah.
adding a lot of experience to this team. The rest of this team has had, like, the commentator made a great point. The Brighton team is like full of young Premier League players who, even though, like, even the more experienced players have no experience in the Premier League, but Lallana will give them that little bit of stability. And luckily for him, it doesn't look like it's too bad of an injury. It looks more like a strain. So hopefully he'll be back. But what do we expect from that game, though? I think that Apurv said that's the biggest game of the week without a doubt. So what do you think, Apurv? Like, do you expect Chelsea to come out in a different way? Obviously, if they change the way their team looks, if they bring in Pulisic, I don't know what Ziyech's situation is, but they could potentially change the way their team looks because of the personnel they have. But what do you expect? Are you like nervous going into that?
I'm not nervous because Chelsea are in a spot where even they need to figure things out and they haven't yet. They're going to take their time, and this is going to be a big game for 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 them more than us. But this will set us for the season where we know what to expect in these big games because 2 years ago Klopp changed from attacking to defensive. This year it seems like haywire. So I don't know. I'm not too nervous about the game, but I'm definitely interested to watch how Liverpool like comes out and what lineup he comes in. Does he trust Keita again?
It's at
But
Anfield, right?
yeah, it's
No.
at Anfield also.
Oh,
But
is it?
Yeah,
No, it's not.
yeah,
it's no, it's at Stamford Bridge. It's at
No,
Stamford
what are
Bridge.
you guys
It's
talking about?
Okay.
it's at away. So
Yeah.
it's
yeah, it's away.
Salah's
Arsenal's
return.
at
Talking about
Arsenal's at Anfield.
Yeah, but anyway, so we'll move on. Talking about like wingers returning to their home ground with Salah returning to Stamford. We have big news with Gareth Bale potentially
Oh,
coming back home to Spurs, and that was a big. I think one of our pod amigos was very, very excited by the result of the Spurs game. A little bit too excited, some might say, considering it's just one game and against a very good team in Everton who looked
he
really
was
good.
more
But
excited about that result than like Arsenal's result.
I swear,
Yeah,
Arsenal top of the table, he's not excited about that. But he's excited that Jose and Spurs succumbed to a 1-0 defeat. I think we'll
no,
just talk about that game for a second. Everton looked incredibly impressive. They went 1-0 up. Richarlison should have scored easily 3-4 goals that game. He had like one
He has
howler
5-star weak
miss.
foot. He has 5-star weak foot on FIFA.
What he
But
doesn't
what about
use.
his right foot in the second half? Forget his left foot. In the right foot, he just couldn't hit the target. But that midfield, we were hyping up that midfield and the balance that it brings. I thought Alan was spectacular in the way he
Oh my
protected
God.
that back four. He really, I mean, and they were
It's like a young
literally at
Fabinho
Spurs.
almost.
Yeah,
You know what
like
I
a
mean?
young. No, I was gonna say
Like
like
a
a
young.
young Luke flavor, but
I mean, also works. Also Brazilian.
also young Brazilian CDM. But Doucouré looked fantastic, and James. I think we have a big James fan in Utsav. He looked really, really up for it. Rio Ferdinand calls him technician.
The ease in
Being
possession
at his
was
own
just.
pace.
Yeah, the ease in possession was just so good to see, and it was just someone I saw a tweet during the game. It's just like when he feels that pressure, how he cuts in and switches the ball. That just basic switch that he makes looks so easy. Half of Everton could not do that with no one like within 10 yards of them, and I think that pass that he can just kind of open up to the left back to Dini or something like that is something that is just huge. Speaking of passes, did you see Messi's pass today?
Oh my God, how did he see that?
That was goal.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
How
it
did
was
he
just a
actually
typical Messi pass, but it was just like I was like, I didn't know who he was gonna pass it to,
He's
but
sad.
yeah,
Sad. He's depressy.
I mean, he's a pussy, so I mean, whatever.
Anyway, but then I think like Everton have like a lot of like positives to take out of that game. But let's just talk about Spurs a little bit. They looked absolutely listless. Dele Alli comes off in the first
Yeah.
half.
Who they're
They
finishing top four, right?
really uh,
No,
none of our predictions had them in top four, by the
the
way.
thing is, okay, look, they had players. I mean, Mourinho came out and he's just like, yeah, we had players for like one training session and everything, and I get all of that, and I'm pretty
Totally
sure their
self.
performances will improve, but it's just like the players didn't even seem like they were, like you said, like they weren't up for it or anything, and this is the first game of the season, and you're already playing like, there are bricks in your pockets and you don't want to run
I
around.
swear, man. I feel like Son was pressing and you could see him like asking his teammates like, "Why is nobody following me?" Like he was just at 1-0 down. They all were like, "It's okay, fine. We'll just take the 1-0 and we'll go back." Like
It's like,
they were really, really
But
quite pathetic. And I think
why is Eric Dyer the first choice centre back, or is
if
Who
you
else
if
is
you
there?
Sanchez injured? No, is Sanchez injured?
Sanchez doesn't play under Mourinho, I don't think.
if you
No,
watch
he
Sam
played. He played a lot last season.
All or Nothing, he
Mourinho's a
speaks in
huge
Thai.
Yeah,
fan.
if you
That's
watch All
why.
or Nothing, I don't think he plays in any of those games. I think
No, I'm
Dyer.
not.
I think it's set on Dyer Alderweireld.
Yeah, because Dai can speak Portuguese, that's why he plays.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, I've been trying to sign you for a long time, you know.
Only Tanganga is out actually. Yeah, so like
Japheth.
Why
Japheth
did
is
you
a
pick
safe player.
Sanchez in
He
your
played like
fantasy?
a beast.
Wait, and Spurs just signed that player from Sevilla also.
I don't know if
Like,
it's
Dumont.
is it been with confirmed. I don't
No,
think
but
it's
No, it's
confirmed.
not. It's not
it's not
confirmed.
So
confirmed.
Confirmed.
Reguilon
But
is also part of
we got. Here we go from Mr. Fabrizio.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
He tweeted this morning that even Bale is like nearly done. So both are
yeah.
from
So I
Madrid, right?
guess
So,
I
So
guess
they've
when
been
they
buying two left.
reached out,
yeah,
yeah.
basically.
Okay.
They're buying two Madrid backup, like Madrid's third and fourth choice left back, basically. And
Dude,
their first
imagine
choice
all
also.
that thing with Bale in it. Oh,
But Reguilon apparently was linked with United as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
move on,
hey,
bro.
they
Yeah,
didn't want to
sure.
pay the buyback clause as well as some other
Because
clause.
it is
And
beneath the
where
club
it's
level.
like, yeah, he's like, nah, I'm good, bro. We got Luke Shaw, so
We have Brandon Williams.
yeah.
But I mean, anyway, coming back, so like from at the end of that game, if you had to ask a neutral who would finish top four, I think most people would pick Everton over Tottenham. But what expectations you guys have from Everton?
No,
Like, you think
the really good part about Everton was the way they managed the game towards the end. They weren't panicking. They knew how to keep the
absolutely?
ball. They weren't getting flustered by anyone. Like that's where you could see that Ancelotti's experience came in and how he's trained that team. And those two signings, how you said, Allen and Doucouré, they just changed the whole thing. Like especially with a player like Sigurdsson, although he's not been so good, he's on the bench just because of these two in the midfield. And I think we can see a top half on the safer side, and if I was gonna bet, like top
The
7 maybe.
expectation,
Did they finish
the
top half?
expectations from 6
No.
years ago used to be top
It's
4.
like
Now it's top.
it's like Everton might challenge Wolves for their spot last year.
Yeah, if on a good
That's a
day.
bold
No, but
that's a
then,
bold prediction because they're gonna
but then
lose
you're
2 games to
forgetting
Liverpool.
there's a team behind them who also made a big splash in this first game. They
Yeah,
signed Neymar from Chelsea for Willian, sorry, from Chelsea for free, and big performance from them. Even though it was against probably the worst team in the Premier League, but it was still away from home. Uh, Very impressive though,
I
honestly. Like of all the teams, I think they looked like very like energetic and bubbly. And we have a resident Arsenal fan here. Do you see?
AFTV.
So Apu said that he sees Everton taking Wolves' spot, but I thought that was Arsenal's, man. I thought Arsenal were gonna come for that sixth spot. What did you
was
make
going
of
for
your
fourth.
opening day fixtures, and what do you make of the way Gabriel, all the new signings, everyone
Yeah.
looked like good.
No, I mean, speaking of signings, literally every signing had a good weekend, I would say, this week. Unless you were a Spurs
Many,
player.
Except Rodrigo, but
except
Uh,
Rodrigo.
that's
Yeah,
fine, you come through. But yeah,
he didn't.
Arsenal, I thought were pretty solid from 0 to 90, and I haven't seen that against the smaller teams in I don't know how long. This is also an away victory, something that we couldn't do last season really well. And Lacazette scored, Aubameyang scored, a new signing scored, so it's pretty much a perfect run out for us. Perfect start to the season. Another thing,
and
I
Chris.
and
So
Willian with
is this 3-4-3 or three at the back? Like, are you comfortable with him playing that, or was like throughout the
so
season?
so this against Fulham it was extremely weird because off the ball we switched to like a back five, and then with the ball Tierney pushes up, and then it becomes sort of like a 2-5 whatever 3. So that way it was really effective in this instance.
Right,
But
right. But on
moving,
paper, it was essentially like a 3-4-3
yeah,
or 3-5-2 or something like
yeah.
that.
I don't. Maybe he's like waiting for more signings. Like Partey is one person that could change the way we line up. Or was another person we're linked with. I
I mean, this isn't manager mode, so let's
exactly,
not.
exactly. I don't know who we're gonna
We've
get
been
in
here
place.
before over the last 10 years.
It's
We've been in
possibly
this
gonna be
spot.
just one of the two, but either
I
one
don't know.
could.
I mean, Awar would be insane. That would be
Yeah.
ridiculous. But
No, but he does want to leave Lyon. That's why it's giving me a little bit of hope, and no one else is linked with him. So if we do splash out and get one of them, it could help us switch to a 4-3-3. But either way, I think like right now with this manager especially, he helped convince Aubameyang to stay. He helped convince Saka to stay. So he's doing like really good stuff. And I don't know if you guys know about this, but his job title changed from head coach to
I
manager.
actually did. I actually
Manager.
read the article. Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually did see that.
So I mean that's in recognition of what he's been doing ever since he's like joined the club, and like he's been, I would say like he's been our best asset in a long time.
One really
Besides,
interesting
yeah.
thing of the game where how, because we were talking about how they lined up, how Maitland Niles, he was playing the left wing
He
back
doesn't know
position,
what.
right?
Mhm.
No, the way he was going on the wing, and it's like Aubameyang has this free role just because of the way the whole team lines up, and he can do whatever he wants because Maitland Niles was running. He's
Yeah,
there on the wing and he's there defending, and Tierney fills back in that left back position. So that whole thing, how he's freeing up Aubameyang and he's actually the central striker,
yeah,
that was incredible to watch. Like it was out there, like I could notice it, which I
yeah.
couldn't.
It's
Like there was no
that
system like that
that's
before.
exactly that's exactly why I told. That's exactly what I was trying to tell Bala. It's not like a very rigid, five at the back
Yeah.
or three at the back. It's very fluid, like with
Because
the ball.
Maitland-Niles doesn't have a position. He just
Exactly.
plays like left.
Yeah, he just plays
Like
like he just covers that area basically. He
there was
doesn't.
actually there was so much craziness going on about talking about English right backs after James's goal. They're like, you
Yeah.
can create an
So
entire team
even
with Lamptey having a
Even
mad
I
performance
was
as
gonna
well.
say Lamptey is something we forgot to
Yeah.
mention. He looked so good. But in that right back 11, I think they said Maitland Niles was the striker. I think he got voted the
It
striker.
makes more sense because
Yeah.
he's literally played everywhere in the front four.
Yeah.
I mean, in like all the positions, every position on the field he's played. But just wanted to quickly talk about Arsenal's upcoming opponents, who is probably, in my opinion, the second worst team in Premier League, is West Ham, and they had.
I think they're the worst. I'm going worst. I'm going with the worst.
And I think what we saw in that first game against Newcastle didn't even play particularly well, but they looked so much better than West Ham had. West Ham had absolutely nothing going for them. They were really struggling to create anything. It just looked like a pathetic display. It looked like one of those displays that would like relegate them. And the commentator was saying himself, he's like, it's a good thing that there are no fans to watch this, because it would be such a horrible stadium atmosphere if they continue playing like this for the rest of the season. But big opportunity for Arsenal to capitalize on their start, and they have a tough bunch of fixtures coming after this, right? They have Wolves, Liverpool, and Chelsea, if I'm not wrong, in their next three after this. So
We
this
have
is a
Liverpool
big
at
game.
Anfield.
Liverpool first, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But they also have a couple of tough fixtures after that as well. So it's
All easy. It's fine.
Tougher, yeah. Wolves
So
is
it's
easier
going to
than
be
Liverpool.
an interesting month for Arsenal. But we'll move on. We have one more team to talk about. We have like a big. We hadn't spoken about United, so maybe we can just quickly go over United and their fixtures. I think the big story coming into United's game is obviously the complete lack of transfer business, and like Mourinho had a huge problem with the lack of preparation before the game. That's a big theme of Solskjaer's conferences as well. He feels like we're completely underprepared going into this game, but it might be interesting to see Van der Beek get a start. Palace had a very, very impressive game against Southampton. Southampton looked like one of the most informed teams post the restart, and I think we all expected them to continue in that vein.
Zaha got a goal disallowed and missed a 1-on-1, so that game could have been 3-0.
So United find themselves 20th position on the table right now. Big game for us. But yeah, I mean, another huge theme is the De Gea versus Henderson thing, and that's going to be an interesting thing to see pan out over the course of the season. But if you guys have any
start right now?
Honestly, I think like you have to give De Gea the start, considering what he's done for the club historically and everything. But I personally have been out on De Gea for a long time. I think 2 seasons ago, that Chelsea game, that was such an important game, that would have decided whether we would have finished Champions League that season. He just dropped the ball in front of Alonso, and, that really cost us moving, like, for the rest of that season as well. But last season, luckily, none of his blunders were really that costly at the end of things. We still managed to get that Champions League spot. But I think this season, with the way the teams around us have improved, there's absolutely no room for error. So he has to be on his game,
He did have a good start so far for Spain. I saw a couple
had a
games and
massive game.
he was
He
really
was man of
impressive.
against Germany, and no less team than that. So that's a really, really good sign. In fact, we got him. No, sorry.
Another positive thing is that Ole has confirmed that Maguire will be captain for the rest of the season. So that reinforces the
fighting
defensive.
belief.
Yeah, the fighting belief, I guess.
80 million.
So
but we're getting
what do you guys think of obviously, in the last couple of years, I mean, United have had problems all across the pitch, but the biggest thing you would say was their kind of lack of creativity and going forward, which obviously since the restart looked really, really good, courtesy of 30 or so penalties. But do you guys think that, that's going to continue this season? Do you think, we could maybe see a United player hit 20 goals in the league, something like that?
I think that the front three, Greenwood, Martial, and Rashford, I think if they can combine for, 40, 50 goals together, I think they'll have a good season. I'm going off of, how Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher were analyzing the front three of the title-winning teams of the last 5 seasons, and they all have combined on an average for over like 50 goals and 25 assists. So I think that Rashford and Martial last year had I think about 35, 40 goals between them. And with Greenwood, they were hitting that mark. So with Bruno Fernandes coming in for the full season, Pogba coming in for hopefully playing the full season with the right attitude, a lot of ifs. But if everything goes as planned, I think they could hit those marks and they would actually be like top 4 contenders for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Like what Carragher said as well is pretty much what I was trying to say last episode because he basically was asked between Chelsea and United who would do better, and he was just like United is a lot more set as a squad compared to Chelsea, where they're like trying to bring in so many players and that could easily set them um, s- make them go backwards instead of forwards. But yeah, that
Yeah,
means
I think
United with
figuring
their
out the
strikers.
strongest 11, like Lampard is still far from figuring out his strongest 11, whereas
Yeah.
Ole
Yeah.
has a very obvious strongest 11 in front of him, So that's at least one positive sign, I guess, from not signing any players is
The
that we don't
one
know.
thing that I
I
would
mean,
say is why isn't he just getting the Sancho thing done? Because if it goes into next year, I don't think he'll come to United because there'll be a lot more people, not a lot more clubs after.
I feel like next year, like the Bayerns and the Madrids and the Barças will be interested, and this is the only window where we have like such a clear path to get him. And the club just doesn't feel like the money is worth it, and they don't feel like Dortmund is being fair in terms of their valuation. But you have to understand Dortmund's point of view as well. Dortmund don't have to sell, right? So they
Yeah,
can hold out whatever fee that they want because they know that in a couple of years they can get the same fee from a bigger team. But it's just I think if there's going to be a sticking point in our season, it's going to come down to that. It's going to come down to that lack of like rotation ability we have in our front four. Because last season as well, we saw that as soon as the restart happened, the first few games everyone was on fire. But then when the team started getting a little bit tired, the inability to bring in somebody to replace anybody of that front four made it really, really hard for them to be consistent. And I think that FA Cup semi-final was just a pure reflection of how tired the squad was.
even the
So
even the Europa against Sevilla.
yeah, absolutely. I think, but the Europa, at least, I still feel like we didn't perform to our best. But at the end of the day, I think these signings are going to be really key, and there's still time. Hopefully, and obviously, Sancho would be like perfect. But even if we can't sign Sancho, I hope that
yeah, maybe
they're
sign
smart
someone
enough
else.
to realize exactly like there's plenty of other players available, and like we don't have a single like winger in our team except Dan James, and he's been so inconsistent. So we really need that option to be figured out. And yeah, I mean, I think that's about it for the games. But we have a little bit, considering now that we have two of India's top 200 fantasy players, we had an interesting fantasy weekend this week with Salah. Any advice, any tips, anything from Apurv? Apurv had Reece James, probably like 5% had Reece James, and Apurv was one of that 5%. 3% had Roman Saiz, and I was one of that 3%. So,
You
So
copied
was
my
I.
fan
any
track
So was I.
because Anitej texted me and
right?
said, "Hey, I copied your exact fan tracks
But
defender
that's
on
only because it was filling my budget, so I had to.
and because it's good. You can admit that it's good."
Maybe.
But for FPL, my uh, from a long term perspective, I would get Sterling because not many people have him. And
What is your strategy for City and United? Are you bringing in any City United players this week? Any of you?
I will disclose it after you know
No, no,
the
no. But the
transfer.
whole point of
The
this. What do
point
you
of this is
Yeah,
mean?
so that you
Yeah.
disclose it.
yeah. I
What?
think the fans want to know,
Now
bro.
I already have Greenwood in my team, and I'm going to keep him for because I think he's a bargain at 7.5 million, even if he scores those 10 goals and gets 3-4 assists. So I'm definitely going to keep him. But it's City, I just don't know because I feel like Aubameyang and Salah are going to do better than De Bruyne and Sterling, and they're in the same price range. So I don't know. I'll have to
Oba's
see.
considered a midfielder now. That was strange to see. But
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's quite annoying, man, because that makes it really hard to have
I
Oba Salah
agree.
join.
Yeah,
Like
I wish he was.
What about you guys? What do you think?
yeah,
I
I
mean,
was
we're
gonna
not
say
in
like
India's top 200, so I don't need
yeah,
anything.
Yeah,
So
so
I'll just keep my
I
stuff to
meant
myself.
Ashwin. I meant
Yeah, I'll
yeah,
Ashwin.
just
he's
keep it to
asking me. No,
myself.
he wasn't even asking you. But I was thinking like, so Oba has to be there this weekend. Oba captain this weekend for sure. I think West Ham looked pathetic, so you have to take that
triple.
risk. Not triple, but yeah, I think my strategy is I'm gonna just like hold on to this team. Maybe bring in Bruno this week, but bring in like either Salah. I mean, bring in either Sterling. Uh, you see, bro. You guys penalties. Penalties is a key fantasy asset. So I'm trying to bring in either De Bruyne or Sterling next week. Just hope that their price doesn't go up because I think De Bruyne, everybody's going to bring him in this week and then he's going to go up. But luckily, I have like 15 accounts, right? So if I sell De Bruyne and all those, I can like
exactly.
artificially
make profit.
increase the
Yeah.
price. Yeah, so it's smart going in. But anyway, it's going to be another exciting round of fixtures. We will catch you on the other side of this round of fixtures.
It's like 36 minutes.